Food nourishes the body, the mind, and the soul. Food has history, tells a story, and takes us back to our roots. One dish can unlock a culture, a world, once unknown to us. Today we're talking to Chef Eric Adjepong, a first-generation Ghanaian. American-born and raised in New York City, he grew up watching his mom in the kitchen cooking traditional meals from Ghana. His passion for West African spices and traditions and the food he grew up eating was showcased on Top Chef, which helped him bring the foods of the diaspora to the forefront of international cuisines. Chef Eric Adjepong talks about his culture and his cuisine. All right, Eric, thank you so much for being here.
Of course, Holly.
It's so exciting to have you in the Reach TV studios.
I'm really excited. This is a beautiful space. I was admiring as soon as I got in, I'm like, whoa. It's pretty nice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Come back anytime. Let's start at the beginning.
Yeah.
You grew up in a pretty traditional Ghanaian household. Talk about how that inspired your food and the cuisine and the way that you create and inspire today.
Being first-generation Ghanaian American, I just grew up in a very rich, traditional West African home. My folks came to the States in the late 80s from Ghana, and it was the music, it was the food, it was the culture, it was the traditions, it was the gatherings that I think just kind of pumped through me and my experiences, but then also that duality of growing up in a New York City, like as a New York City kid.
What are the spices and flavors from Ghana that people may not know about? Because I'm sure a lot of people are not familiar with Ghanaian cuisine.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think about immediately the warm spices, cinnamon, clove, nutmeg. I think about chilies, habaneros, scotch bonnets. I think about corn and peanuts. I love like ground herring or a ground shrimp. So we use that quite often as well in our culinary lexicon, so to speak. And really that's what makes West African food, and it's kind of the backbone for a lot of the food that we eat.
What was it about food that you said, I want to be a chef, I want to create, I want to spread the love of those flavors?
Yeah, I think it hit me before I hit it, really. I just fell in love with cooking, and it was kind of thing that just kind of grabbed me. It was a bug. My whole family are great cooks. Like everyone is a really great cook. So I just kind of finagled my way into the kitchen and started making like little box cakes in the beginning, and kind of graduated into more like better things and more responsibilities in the kitchen. And I grew up just loving culinary shows. Like I would watch Julia Childs, I would watch Yan Can Cook. You have that moment at the high school with your guidance counselor, you try to figure out what it is that you're trying to do, and that's when it hit me like, you know, I can actually make this into a career.
And you did. You went to Johnson & Wales and trained. So you were very classically trained in a lot of ways, formally trained.
For sure.
So how were you able to then take the flavors of the Ghanaian cuisine and marry that with the classically trained techniques that you learned and create this cuisine? Going
to school in a very like stringent, you know, brigade system, French, you know, it's hierarchy based, and you learn a lot. You learn about the techniques, you learn about the proper ways to do certain things, and you kind of try to bridge the gap, or at least I did. And I wanted to kind of impart those flavors from West Africa, the flavors that I grew up eating, and the jollof rice and the wache and the kenke, because I didn't necessarily see that so much in school, you know, as well. So it was really just the kind of the tall task, the one that I'm still kind of doing and still trying to figure out, but I'm having a lot of fun doing it so far.
Okay, I have to talk about Top Chef.
Let's do it.
Because we know that you were a fan favorite, you were a judge favorite, right?
Yes.
What was the experience like for you?
Insane, as advertised. It's really, really difficult, but it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done, I think, in my entire life.
Really?
I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I was such a huge fan growing up and watching the seasons before me. I knew that I wanted to really showcase West African food. I knew that I want to kind of put that cuisine on, the forefront, especially on national television. And unfortunately, I didn't see that. 16 seasons before me, I hadn't seen something like that done. So I had the opportunity to do it, and I'm just so glad that the judges and honestly America was so receptive to it.
It seemed like every challenge you added some Ghanaian flavors and you made it very unique in your own, and not a lot of the other chefs did.
It was
risky.
It was extremely risky. Oh my goodness. I mean, you're introducing new cuisine to these like seasoned palates. These are some of the most like trained chefs in the entire world. So you can't necessarily pull the wool over their eyes, but you're essentially kind of teaching them as well as they're eating. And I thought that was really the hallmark of my season. And not every week was easy, but
it paid off.
But it paid off.
Very
absolutely.
well.
Thank you. Yeah, it definitely paid off.
Talk a little bit about how those West African flavors have really influenced every cuisine throughout all cultures in the world.
1000%. I mean, I think about the continent of Africa being the second biggest land mass mass, right, in the entire world.
Yeah.
Yet the food is so unknown. You talk about gumbo, and that's such a West African dish. Gumbo means okra in Senegalese, right? You talk about like shrimp and grits and how that is a very West African dish. The West Indies, the Caribbean, are just loaded with so many West African influences. French, when I think about like going to New Orleans and that kind of whole like that spice note as well. Like these are so many things that remind me of West Africa and really things that I try to like harken back to. Not only delicious food, but really great stories to tell.
How do you get across to people that are very interested in the Ghanaian cuisine and these spices? How do you strip it down for people to say, here, try this? It's not as scary. It's very easy to do.
Absolutely, really good question. I think, honestly, it's really introducing people to food that they probably already know or are familiar with, and just kind of hitting them with different flavors and different techniques. So we do this really fun yassa burger that I helped open up a restaurant in Ghana called East End Bistro. And it's a lamb burger, but we take this beautiful yassa jam from Senegal, which is like so lemon, so much butter, a lot of turmeric, ginger, garlic, and it's cooked down into this like beautiful onion jam. We just layer a good heaping amount of that on a burger, and it's like the craziest thing you ever tasted.
Great.
It's so delicious. But stuff like that, I think, is a really great way to introduce new palates to a cuisine that's been very, very old and very ancient. So, I mean, now that you have that reference to that burger specifically, you can go back and have yassa poulet or, whatever kind of yassa dish that you might see in a restaurant coming from West Africa or Senegal specifically. You almost have to like gently kind of bring people into a new cuisine, but when you do, they stick around forever because the flavors are amazing.
What about if somebody wanted to tackle this at home?
Go for it, 100%. There's so many great chefs, not only myself, that are like preaching West African food from the highest mountaintops. Books were really like my teacher as well. So Jessica B. Harris has an amazing cookbook on West African food. Marcus Samuelson, another great chef. I'm going to be having a book out soon for you, which I'm excited about as well.
Wait,
yes.
Let's talk more about this. Okay,
I'm
wait,
excited.
don't just drop that there.
Just a little drop.
Tell us about it.
Sankofa, it's my book, my upcoming cookbook. It's really going to help kind of change and talk about the narrative of West African food and why it's so important and why it's so relative as well.
Right,
yeah,
that's great.
For sure.
And finally, what's next for you that you haven't done? What do you have your eye on doing?
Just kind of continuing on that path, hopefully have a restaurant of my own in the States, and keep spreading that gospel of the food, really. That's my number one thing, is just I want to continue to cook, make people happy. That's the only thing that I feel like I'm super, super good at, and I'm just going to continue to ride that wave as much as possible.
The only thing you're super, super good at. I'm gonna disagree. I'm a giant fan, and this has been a great day for me. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much, Holly.